ओम तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भुरिदा जनाः. So we were discussing Keshav Chandra Sen, Sri Ramakrishna's conversations with Keshav Chandra Sen during the latter's illness in his house known as Kamal Kutir, which has been translated into Lily Cottage. That is the name, Lily Cottage. But the Bengali name of that house was Kamal Kutir. So he used to live there and he is not very well. So Sri Ramakrishna has gone to see him. So Sri Ramakrishna was in ecstasy when we saw last time. He was in ecstasy and talking, murmuring something in a low voice. He was talking to the Divine Mother. Now Keshav raised his voice. He was inspired. We all know that though Brahmos were not supposed to worship personal God in any of their aspects, either as Divine Mother or a father or any image especially. Whereas Keshav Chandra Sen, according to Sri Ramakrishna, secretly worshipped because by heart he used to consider himself as a sadhaka of the Divine Mother. So Sri Ramakrishna knew that. But anyway, he has come. He comes. I mean, he is in front of Sri Ramakrishna. When Sri Ramakrishna is in this ecstasy, he also gets inspiration, and he raises his voice and says, "I have come. I have come." Now, what it signified, we do not know in what sense he said. That means he is ready to accept Sri Ramakrishna and the Divine Mother. Maybe that is one of the reasons he is shouting like that. He is in also partial ecstasy. And Sri Ramakrishna, he just goes and very emotionally holds Sri Ramakrishna's hand and strokes it gently as if he is a close friend. He was definitely, Sri Ramakrishna loved Keshav Chandra Sen very much because of his sincerity and because of his wonderful spiritual nature. But now Sri Ramakrishna is still in bhava, in the highest mood. He is saying so many things spontaneously, as if it is coming from some higher source. And everybody who was present there are listening spellbound because they've never heard Sri Ramakrishna speaking such wonderful words, as if there is a flow of spiritual thought and the Divine Mother is speaking through him. So Sri Ramakrishna is continuing now. He says, as long as one retains one's upadhis. Upadhis means labels. The labels with which we tag ourselves and tag others. He is a good man or bad man, rich man, poor man. All these upadhis, they are known as upadhis in Sanskrit. So our personality and the upadhis that we attach to our personality makes us masks our real identity. That is the idea. So we don't try to understand who we are and mask ourselves with the various upadhis which we have gathered with the help of our samskaras, with the help of our karma, with the help of our thought. So he says, because of these upadhis only, you have the perception of plurality of persons like Kesha, Prasanna, Amrita, Amrit Lal Sarkar, the son of, I think Amrita was Amrit Lal Sarkar, son of Mahendra Lal Sarkar, who was also used to visit Sri Ramakrishna, sometimes alone or sometimes with his father. And it was he who later on, after the passing away of Mahendra Lal Sarkar, uh, built up that famous Indian Association for Cultivation of Sciences, which produced a Nobel laureate. C.V. Raman got Nobel Prize, and Jagdish Chandra Bose was also a very uh, great scientist associated with this institute in Jadavpur. So Amritlal Sarkar has written a beautiful book on how the science movement in India, it is rather strange that inspired by his father, he wrote this book where the detailed history, including the history of Jamshedji sending uh, Mr. Parsha from Bombay to understand how we can build an institute, which later on was established as Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. But that came much later. The effort made by Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar and Amrutlal Sarkar, his son, preceded those attempts. But the only difference between these two institutes was Mahendralal Sarkar strictly refused to take any British help. He said there should not be any involvement of any uh, interference in this institute. It will be by Indians, for Indians, or for everybody, for the general betterment of society, because he believed in the power of science to change society, Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar. But at the same time, he believed that research institute should be independent. He did not like any political interference. Whereas the Tata Institute in the beginning, they had to agree, because that was one of the conditions that the British government laid down, that it will have a British director, at least in the beginning. And for several years till C.V. Raman became its first director, they had to work under the British. Though it was entirely funded by Jamshedji Tata, and also the land for that institute, the famous institute, was given by none other than Mysore Maharaja, who was a disciple of Swami Vivekananda. But Mahendralal Sarkar and later his son also followed the principle, and that's why IACS did not get, and even Indian kings who had promised donations for this institute, because everybody felt it would do good to India, but they were afraid, because they were afraid that the British government would not like that Indians are funding their own institute. And they were afraid, they did not want to displease the British government. So many of the kings who were just mere puppets, they refused. And our Mahendralal Sarkar died a very sad man. The whole history is documented in that book. It is a sad chapter that such a wonderful institute where some of the greatest of scientists, including C.V. Raman, who initially worked there and later on became the director of Indian Institute of Science, most of them, like S.N. Bose, Jagdish Chandra Bose, Praful Chandra Rai, all great scientists, they were nourished by this institute. Though it was a small building, they didn't have enough funds to run it properly. But with whatever facilities were there, some of the greatest scientists were created. So Amrita is also there, Keshab is there, Prasanna is there. Now all these personalities have come with various different attitudes, and Sri Ramakrishna is harmonizing them. Today morning there was a nice session, the universal message of Sri Ramakrishna, at about 9:30. It was conducted by our Manila Center in Philippines. So it was a Google Meet, and there the topic was the universal message of Sri Ramakrishna. So we find that you'll find that all people, Brahmos, who do not believe in a personal God, Prasanna, perhaps he was a devotee, Amrita, who was like his father, was an atheist. Now they are all coming attracted by something which they do not know. Something something in Sri Ramakrishna is attracting them, and they are coming and asking questions which they would normally not encourage or ask. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is also in a wonderful bhava, in a divine ecstatic mood, and he's seeing Keshab Chandra Sen. He's inspired to give out these wonderful inspired quotes. I mean, he's uh, saying many things which are, according to him, is making everybody spellbound, because these things are a matter of experience. They cannot be or maybe intellectually, many things can be intellectually established or explained. But when it is a matter of experience, it carries the weight of the vision behind it. The power of the spoken word comes from the experience which the person who speaks inspires that spoken word. So it's not just the spoken word, but who speaks it, it is very important. So here, even a person who does not believe in the Divine Mother or is not supposed to believe in the God with form, like the Brahmos believed, the Keshav Chandra Sen, their leader himself, is spellbound. So, moreover, Sri Ramakrishna is continuing, when one has acquired ultimate jnana, so he's talking not of bhakti now, jnana, one sees that the same consciousness has differentiated into the world, its creatures, and 24 cosmic principles. We have discussed this, what these 24 cosmic principles are: the Mahat, the mind, the organs of all these different layers of consciousness, which become gross, which after grossifying appear as this physical universe, our physical body, our mental body, subtle body, our causal body. So it all can be explained, the whole of Prakriti can be explained, the world, its creatures, animate as well as inanimate, everything can be explained using these 24 cosmic principles, which form the core of Sankhya philosophy, which is the basis of yoga philosophy. And of course, Vedanta also accepts it with a slight difference. But the categories of Sankhya are common to both Vedanta and Sankhya. Even so, now Sri Ramakrishna is telling something which for this reason everybody is spellbound. He says, even so, everything is running according to the Sankhya theory of 24 cosmic principles, the world, creatures, how they are created, and what is the perception, how the perception takes place, and what is the reality behind the appearance, and all those things are elaborately expressed. But even so, there is a special manifestation of God's power in some. Truly, he has become all, but at certain places there is a greater manifestation of his power, in others less. And then he is recollecting one conversation which he had with Vidyasagar. Because Vidyasagar, most of the people who are satisfied with the intellectual kind of appreciation of spiritual truths want to bring a kind of equality in the gross universe, which is not possible. Diversity will remain. There will be people endowed with less and more power. When it is a question of Shakti, Shakti does not manifest equally in all people. Now we have to take it for granted that this is how Prakriti is built. So Sri Ramakrishna is just repeating it. Vidyasagar said, as many people would like to say, that all are born with the same powers and they don't manifest it. No, that is wrong. Everybody is not born with the same capacity. Otherwise, there will not be any diversity in life. You can't compare a spiritual person with an ignorant person. They are not the same. In Prakriti, they can't be same. The background may be same. Unity can be understood only at the highest level of the spirit, not at the level of the gross existence. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is correcting Vidyasagar. Vidyasagar asked him, has God given more of his power to one and less of it to another? As if God is a person who establishes some kind of uniformity and makes everybody equal. God never does that. Then Sri Ramakrishna replied to him, if it were not so, I mean, if God had not created human beings or people with different capacities, then how can one person defeat 50 others? Besides, he says, why should we have come to see you? There is something special. So Sri Ramakrishna, in his own humorous way, says, why have we come to see you? Because Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar is a respected person, a charitable person, a noble person who spends his money wisely, a scholar, and many good qualities you have which others don't have. That is why we have come to see you. So see how Sri Ramakrishna is practical. Then he says there is more power of God in that receptacle in which he manifests his divine Leela or divine sport. So that means he's speaking of an incarnation. He says sometimes in certain persons that power of God manifests, power of the spirit manifests itself most where he is manifesting his divine play or the divine sport. Because for him, he is not bound by karma. Like all other people, they are not bound by karma. They are not forced to do certain things. They do it out of their own sweet will. They are the master of themselves. That is why they are incarnations and they can control the past, present, and future, as Swamiji described it. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying the same thing. And then immediately, like most of his teachings, he explains it through a parable. He says the landlord can be found anywhere in his estate. No doubt, if you go to an estate, he may be in the garden, he may choose to remain anywhere he likes. But very often, people can see him or he is seen mostly in the drawing room. That is where he receives his visitors. He won't be just loitering around like the other people who are managing the estate. There is a particular procedure where you have to take an appointment, then he'll come down to his drawing room and he will meet. So also, he says the heart of a devotee, God is everywhere, but the heart of a devotee is like the Lord's drawing room. Now, this is very important because why right from time immemorial, you will find that we are asked to meditate on God or on the Ishta or an avatara in the heart or even on an image. It is the heart which has the power to manifest the spirit. There is a thing known as Chit Jada Granthi. In Vedanta, they don't say, because there's a lot of confusion. People normally sometimes mistake it for our physical heart, which is nothing but, which is run by the power of prana, the circulation, the pumping of the blood. It has nothing to do with the spiritual heart. The spiritual heart is a center within the human personality, which is known as Chit Jada Granthi. It is a point or a location where apparently Chit means consciousness, seems to have been connected to the Jada. Jada means the gross. So there is a connection between the gross and the subtle, or gross and the consciousness, which is easy to break if you meditate in the heart. So when you meditate and try to see inwards instead of seeing outwards, as the Kathopanishad says, then if you are lucky, if you are following the path of jnana, they say you will break this Chit Jada Granthi. You will feel you don't need a body to express. I mean, you become free, detached as it were from the body. The sense of bodilessness which some of the realized people experience, as Sri Ramakrishna has experienced a few minutes ago, he went into samadhi. The doctor was surprised. He did not see any sign of breathing. All the prana, all the gross body somehow seems to have come to a total stop. And the Chit and the Jada, the Granthi seems to have been broken. But in the case of an avatara, he is enacting a Leela. He can choose to disassociate or disconnect himself with the body, and he can choose to again associate, whereas it doesn't happen so in the case of an ordinary jiva. First of all, first and foremost, it is so difficult even to think that you are not the body. The ego and all the others, raga, dvesha, which we discussed in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they simply do not allow you to be free from the clutches of the gross body and the prana. So to control gross body and also to control prana is the goal of pranayama, asana, and all the steps leading to samadhi. But the place that this knot has to be untied or cut asunder is known as the spiritual heart. And Sri Ramakrishna says his power especially descends in the heart of a devotee. It is like the Lord doesn't meet you anywhere. He does not manifest through any other part of the body. He manifests in the center of your body, because that is where the consciousness and the chit jada, granthi means a knot. That knot has taken place there, so it has to be untied there only. You cannot untie it somewhere else. That is where the knot is there. So his power, or his the power of the Lord manifests itself or descends in the heart of a devotee, which is his drawing room. So if you meet the landlord, if you have to meet the landlord, the appropriate place would be his drawing room. That is where he will be at leisure and he will address all your issues, because the landlord is supposed to meet all his subjects, and they normally go and convey their grievance to him, and he solves them. So then he says, Sri Ramakrishna says, what are the signs of it? Wherever much work is done, you will see there is his power especially manifested. Now, power is a prerogative of Adya Shakti, the Adya Shakti or Shakti, which decides whom to empower more and whom to empower less. Power does not manifest itself equally. It manifests itself through some persons in a great measure, and in some persons the power does not manifest. That is why you find so much of diversity. Some are good, some are bad, some are highly spiritual, some are not spiritual. So Sri Ramakrishna says, if you see somebody doing some exceptional work, some exceptional contribution in the field of the spirit or in any other field, even in the gross field, if somebody is doing, as Sri Ramakrishna said, one person is able to defeat 50 persons. He has so much strength. Where does this strength come from? It comes from Adya Shakti. And Sri Ramakrishna here says it's not separate from Supreme Brahman. If you think the consciousness is separate from the Shakti, this is a wonderful concept which Sri Ramakrishna gives. He says you cannot think of one without thinking of the other. For example, he gives an example. Again, he gives a wonderful example. Think of the gem and its luster. If you do not hold a gem, you cannot think of its effulgence. Similarly, you cannot think of the gem without thinking of its brilliance. Then he gives another example. It is very logical. If there is Brahman, then there has to be Shakti, because that is the power of Brahman. Similarly, it is the snake and its serpentine movement. So if it is a snake, then it has to move in a particular way, which is known as serpentine movement. A rope will not move. So the snake and its motion are unique. Snake, motionless snake, and the snake with motion is like Brahman empowered with Shakti. Similarly, if you forget the wriggling movement of the snake and you consider something stationary, then it is not a snake. It may be a rope. Maybe in darkness you think, but it is not moving. That means the snake and its wriggling motion, the fire and its burning power, milk and its whiteness, many things, many examples Sri Ramakrishna has given. They are intimately connected. Then he says, the subheading that is given now is Brahmo Samaj and seeing God in man. The difference between aspirant and the perfected So there is one aspirant who is aspiring to be perfect, and there is a perfected or Jivan Mukta who has already been freed from the clutches of the Jada. He has broken the Granthi and he stands in all his glory and he has no connection. So there is a huge difference between the two. Adya Shakti, or the primordial power of Brahman, the original power from where all this creation has sprung, has been differentiated into the phenomenal world, living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. It is a case of involution and evolution. Now, this is a wonderful idea. Swamiji took this idea, and when he was traveling in the Himalayas, he says, I have solved, he always spoke about, he says, evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution is a one-sided theory. According to Darwin, according to all evolutionists, we were some basic protozoa was there, and then it evolved into the lion, the king among animals, and then the aboriginal man, and then the different levels of humanity which we see around us. And according to them, according to science, they think that this theory of evolution is enough to explain everything. He says, we have descended from our ancestors, and who are our ancestors? Maybe some kind of ape, and before that also they had some form. So they try to genetically or otherwise try to establish this fact that we have in fact descended from monkeys, or even if you go backward, maybe from an amoeba or some protozoa. So, but Swamiji says it is not possible. Scientifically also, evolution cannot happen if there is no involution. What evolves has evolved into something. A seed has been planted, it grows into a tree. Then again it gives rise to a seed. If you plant that, the seed is involved tree. The tree has been involved into a seed. The whole power of expression, the empowerment of the entire tree has been concealed in that small seed. No matter wherever you plant it, the seed will convert itself into another tree. So that is the principle of involution and evolution. So Sri Ramakrishna, in his very rustic language, he says, Brahman evolves, not evolves, that involved Adya Shakti, it is through the power of, in Indian philosophy or Vedanta, the pure consciousness never evolves nor involves. It is only the Shakti. So evolution, avatara, the 24 principles, all the Sankhyan categories, which tries to explain this universe and divide it into the causal, the subtle, and the gross universe which we see around us, subjectively and objectively. If you see, they are all evolved from a primal cause or Adya Shakti, and then again they merge into that Adya Shakti, and that Adya Shakti, according to Sri Ramakrishna, are involved or are connected with this Brahman. It is the same Brahman, when it is active, appears as Adya Shakti. Then he says, suddenly changes, because there was some criticism that he was close to some young people, young men who would be monks. So, and he used to give special attention to these sincere disciples. And householders definitely did not like that, because they felt, why this Thakur is giving some special attention to these people. They wanted to justify that we also have devotion, we also come to you. And Hajra was one of them. He had a big family, and yet he was pretending that he is a spiritual person. And his intention of staying in Dakshineshwar was that he could avoid, his family and his children were taken care of by his in-laws. Naturally, if you just desert them, the in-laws will have to look after creating. And here he comes and talks about Jnana and tries to belittle even Sri Ramakrishna and criticize him for being very close to Narayan and other people, because Sri Ramakrishna could see their benefit, see their greatness, that inherent greatness, that in future these are the people who have that spiritual stuff within them. And Hajra thought he was wise and wiser than these young students who used to come. And he used to criticize sometimes, quoting from the scriptures, that the scriptures say you should not be attached. Why are you so attached to these people? Why are you giving special attention? You should be neutral, and all the wrongly digested food, wrongly digested spiritual ideas from the scriptures he would take and try to convince Sri Ramakrishna, or go on preaching, telling that he is always uh, keen and is so much attached to this Naren and other people. Then he says, uh, then he says, Hajra says, of course, Sri Ramakrishna is like a child. So he's saying, why do I care so much for Rakhal, Naren and other young men? And Hajra also said the other day, why do you go about thinking of these young men? When will you give your mind to God? As if Hajra is teaching Sri Ramakrishna that he should be absorbed in God. And Keshab and others know this, know the nature of Hajra also. So they just smile, because Sri Ramakrishna himself is admitting that I am being criticized like this. But Sri Ramakrishna, see the honesty and his childlike nature. He did not get angry when Hajra said this. He wanted to verify. So he says, this set me to thinking seriously about it. I said to the Divine Mother, what is this, Mother? Hajra asked why I think so much of these young men. Then I asked Bholanath. Bholanath also said, one can find the same illustration in the Mahabharata. Now you see the simplicity of Sri Ramakrishna. Somebody insignificant, knowing his nature, still like a child he just believed for the time being, not always, because his final appeal was in the court of the Divine Mother. Whatever she said would be his answer. And once she gets an answer from there, then he doesn't care for anybody in the world. But before that, he asked Bholanath also, who was a scholar perhaps. So he says, Mahabharata, there is a wonderful explanation for this. Why people who are highly and spiritually elevated seek the company of some kinds of people, not everybody. So he says there in the Mahabharata, when a person comes down from Samadhi, where can he rest his mind? He cannot help seeking the company of devotees endowed with the quality of Sattva. This dictum of Mahabharata at once relieved my mind, and all laughed. See, Sri Ramakrishna is so honest. He says, when I got this explanation that, oh, Mahabharata also says this, so I am correct. That when I come down, and in fact that has happened now. If that's why he today's revered Swami Baburam Maharaj or Swami Premanandji's birthday. So in fact, once when he saw Premanandji, he said, why don't you stay here? Because when my mind comes down from a very high ecstatic state of Bhava Samadhi, I want people, I can't just touch impure people. My hand and everything retracts. I just can't stand their touch. So if you are there, because he knew, and he used to say that Baburam or Swami Premananda, who later on became Swami Premananda, is pure to his bone. His bones are also pure, not only the flesh, but his bones is pure to the marrow. That's what Sri Ramakrishna told about him. So he says they are highly sattvic people who have absolutely not been touched by the world. So when such people are there, there is this, when you come down from a high spiritual state, you usually like the company, you expect these such people to be around you. So that's why he used to ask Baburam, Latu Maharaj, and there were some others who who were free. Of course, Naren would have been better, but he was not free. He had his own problems. So many court cases were going on. They were practically driven out of their house. So many things were troubling him. So he was not able to come here. But others, whenever Sri Ramakrishna got a chance, he said, why don't you stay here? So he enjoyed their company. But when Hajra told him that you are getting attached to these youngsters, in the beginning he did not criticize or he did not argue against him. He believed him like a child, went to the Divine Mother. Before going to the Divine Mother, of course, Divine Mother gave him another answer, but before him, he confirmed that Mahabharata also approves this state of mind. Because when you come down from a high state of spiritual state, you need somebody who is sattvic. And then he says in a very egoless way, he says, it relieved my mind. And then he is very compassionate. He says, Hajra is not to blame. When a person is a spiritual aspirant, he should give his whole mind to God, saying, not this, not this. I mean, not the temporary things, but hold on to the permanent. But it is different in the case of a perfected soul. When he is a sadhaka, no doubt he has to practice this attitude. But after attaining God, one realizes the fact of involution and evolution. When the butter is taken out of buttermilk, you see how beautiful example Sri Ramakrishna is giving. When the butter is taken out of buttermilk, one realizes that butter is not essentially different from the buttermilk, nor the buttermilk essentially different from butter. But it is after churning, one understands this. It's not before churning. If somebody is told who has never seen butter or never seen how butter is extracted from buttermilk, he will not accept it. If you say there is butter inside this, can you see this? But somebody has to, for the first time at least, he has to be shown that if you churn it, the butter rises to the top and it floats on the buttermilk, and then you take it out, wash it with water. So they are essentially same, not different, but their forms are different. So he says one has full realization that God has become everything. Only at some places he manifests himself in greater degree than in others. He is there in butter, the butter is there in buttermilk also. But unless you practice spirituality, do spiritual practices, which is equivalent to churning the butter of buttermilk, you will not get the butter. Just saying there is butter in the buttermilk is like saying there is consciousness, all pervading consciousness everywhere. But what of it? Have we realized it in our hearts? Have we seen that Lord in our drawing room, in our hearts? So he says, when the ocean of ecstasy is agitated, you see the wonderful examples he is giving, because he is in an inspired mood now. When the ocean of ecstasy is agitated, even dry land is pole deep underwater. Initially, one must take the circuitous course of the river to reach the ocean. I mean, normally, in normal case, the river meanders itself and then finally it reaches the ocean. It passes through many obstacles, through many valleys, and finally it manages to reach the ocean. But when there is a flood, when the ocean covers the whole land with water because of some tidal wave, then all the rivers, then you can row your boat straight into the ocean. You don't have to go roundabout along the course of the river. So that is one example. Then he says, when the harvest of paddy has been reaped, one need no longer go around the bulk. One may walk straight over the field to any point. But if there is a crop which is standing, then you can't just walk over it. If it is cut, or if it is harvested, then you can cross. So after God realization, only after God realization, like if there is a flood, like the ocean is flooding everything, then only you realize that God is everywhere. But till then, you have to negotiate yourself, do sadhana, and go through all the obstacles, like you travel by a boat and finally reach the sea. But sometimes the tidal wave is so strong that the grace of God is like a tidal wave. It comes and it takes everybody. Any boat, without following the path, the rough path of the river, can easily float and go into the ocean. So, however, there is a great degree of his manifestation in some special human being. He is manifested more in devotees endowed with the quality of sattva. People who have no desire at all to enjoy lust and gold. So he's telling something which is the meaning of sattva. What does sattva mean? Lust and gold is a term which he uses in Bengali, Kamini Kanchan, but what it really means is lust and gold or wealth, desire for greed and lust and greed. Gold means greed, greed for wealth, greed for possessions. Now, what is the speciality about that? In sattva, there cannot be these qualities. It is only when rajas comes, or if one is tamasic, then all these things attach oneself to the personality of that sadhaka. So one who have no desire to enjoy lust and gold, they are sattvic people. And for them, it is very easy and God is manifest more. He is all pervading. But in butter, you will find butter only in special circumstances. Otherwise, it is mixed in the buttermilk. It has not manifest itself as butter. When a person comes down from samadhi, where can he rest his mind? He then seeks the association of pure devotees endowed with sattva guna, who have given up the enjoyment of lust and gold. Otherwise, with what will he engage himself? So he is hinting why he likes to surround himself, and he becomes restless if such people are not around him. So Sri Ramakrishna is himself explaining, though he got support from uh, that Bholanath who quoted from the Mahabharata, you will find such gems all over in many of our scriptures, the Upanishads also. But till Bholanath told him, like a child, he was, or maybe to guide us, he was trying to explain that he did not immediately dismiss Hajra. He was not full of ego that who is Hajra to tell me. Normal person would have been irritated. So if he had a doubt, if somebody expresses a doubt, he will go and ask either Bholanath, but he also asked the Divine Mother in another occasion. If he had no Bholanath near him, he would have simply gone to the temple, just as he told Totapuri. And Totapuri said, do you want to take sannyas? So he said, I'll go and ask my mother. Totapuri misunderstood. He thought he is going to ask his biological mother. And seeing him go to the temple, then he started laughing. But for Sri Ramakrishna, he got his intuitive or the correct answer only from the Divine Mother. So once when some other people, not Hajra, or somebody else told, why are you so much attached to these young people? Then he went to Divine Mother. Divine Mother showed or told him that because you see God in these people, because they have that sattva quality, and because you see Narayana in them, you are attracted to them. Your mind being having come down from such a high plane would not like the company of people who are not sattvic. So it is because you see the Narayana in them, Narayana in the sense the divine in them. That is why the day they will be full of sattva, you will hate to see them. You will hate to have any contact with them. Mother told him, these very young men, if by some chance they lose their sattva, and if you cannot see Narayana in them, then you will not even see their face. And he told this to Narendra and others also, that I went to mother, I thought I was attached, and I said, what is this? Why is this happening? Then he said, mother told me that the day you don't see this divinity shining through these people, you will not even look at his face. So then he's still continuing. He's in a divine ecstatic mood, just come down. And also his ecstasy has been ignited by the presence of Keshav Chandra Sen, who was deeply spiritual. And though he was a Brahmo, he had accepted the reality of the Divine Mother. That is why he says, he who is Brahman is indeed the Adya Shakti. So the topic, this conversation has been divided into a subheading by M. The topic is Brahmo Samaj and the motherhood of God. We know most of the traditions respect God as the Father in heaven. But here, the idea of motherhood, which through Keshav Chandra Sen, Sri Ramakrishna, and also others, Brahmos, they were deeply influenced by the love of God as the Divine Mother, as a child would love its mother and the mother of the universe. What is this motherhood of God and what is this motherhood of universe? Now Sri Ramakrishna is giving in an inspired message the philosophy behind this. Again he says, he who is Brahman is indeed Adya Shakti. When he is inactive, I call him Brahman, I call him Purusha. When he creates, preserves, dissolves and performs all such actions, I call him Shakti. I call him Prakriti. Purusha and Prakriti, he who is Purusha is indeed Prakriti. Together they constitute the Anandamaya, the all blissful male aspect of God. And if it is the female, all blissful female aspect of God, we call it Anandamayi. Ma Anandamayi means one who is possessed of joy, the divine bliss. And if it is Anandamaya Paramatma, Anandamaya Brahma, so endowed with bliss. So whether you call him Anandamaya or Anandamayi, the female, all blissful female aspect of God, they are two sides of the same coin. Then he says something. He says, see, now we make so much of this gender inequality and then men consider themselves superior to women. There's so much of quarrel and sociological uh, dispute because of this gender inequality. Sri Ramakrishna very clearly solves it by this concept of Anandamaya and Anandamayi. It is just adding an E. So whether it is all blissful male aspect of God or you accept the all blissful female aspect of God, it doesn't make any difference. So that's why he says, he tells later, he who is aware of manhood is also aware of womanhood. He who knows the father also knows the mother. Keshav laughs. He laughs because perhaps they did not understand the deep significance of what he was saying. But Sri Ramakrishna used to tell these things in such a childlike way that everybody was amused. And he spoke a great, he gave out a great logical statement. But for most of the people, like Keshav or others, they would have taken it lightly because it's a very simple statement that he who is aware of light also has to know what darkness is. Otherwise, how can you compare the two? So also he says, he who knows the father also knows the mother. One who has a sense of darkness has also a sense of light. One who knows the meaning of night also knows the meaning of day. One who has the feeling of joy also has the feeling of grief. So he's telling how pair of opposites establish this idea that pair of opposites coexist, and that is Maya, that is Prakriti. Keshav laughs and says, yes, sir, I do. That means he is agreeing to what Sri Ramakrishna. Then Sri Ramakrishna says something wonderful. What mother do I mean? Why the mother of the universe? So he's asking, when I say mother, is it some biological mother or one who has given me birth? No, she is the mother of the universe. When I say the divine mother or mother, Ma, that's the simple word he used, Ma. So for him, Ma meant only one thing, the mother of the universe. She who has created the universe is also preserving it. She who is always protecting her children and providing them with whatever they want. Dharma, righteousness, artha, wealth, kama or desire, fulfillment of desires, and moksha, liberation. A true child cannot live apart from its mother. It is his mother who knows everything. The boy just eats, drinks, and plays. He knows nothing. So this seems to be a very simplistic attitude, but it's a great psychological fact. All of our anxieties, according to Sri Ramakrishna, is because we don't believe in the mother. If a child really thinks the divine or anybody thinks of the divine as his mother, as a child does, then he has to be as carefree and as free like a child. And Keshav, of course, agrees, he says. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, Sri Ramakrishna then comes down to the sense world as he talks. Now he is in a very light mood. He laughs and talks with Keshav. The room is full of people. They listen to Thakur with full attention, fixing their eyes on him. They observe that neither Thakur nor Keshav say, "How do you do? How do you feel?" No words are spoken except about the Lord. So this is not an ordinary meeting where you go and enjoy the company of somebody and you begin the conversation. How are you, all the trivial questions are not asked here. There is some deep communication going on, because Keshav Sen is practically ready. He's coming towards the end of his life, and having done so much of preaching and other things, now he has understood that whatever I get, the true spirituality which I am seeking, which I was seeking through various methods, starting the Brahmo Samaj and all, I will get it here. So he is just focusing on whatever comes out of Sri Ramakrishna's lips, because he knows his time is short. He's just about, he passed away, he was already sick. So he knew this is the time when I should absorb every drop of nectar or kathamruta, as they say, from which is falling from the lips of the master. So Sri Ramakrishna now tells Keshav, why do the Brahmos dwell so much on the glory of God? That was one of their favorite prayers. Most of their prayers describe or try to describe the glory of the Lord. That is, try to describe Prakriti, which Sri Ramakrishna did not approve of. He said, you say, "Oh Lord, you have created the moon, you have made the sun and the stars. What is the need of all these kinds of prayers?" Many people praise a garden when they see it. How many want to see the owner? What is greater, the garden or its owner? After drinking wine, who cares to inquire how much wine is in the wine shop? A single bottle suffices. So here also, Sri Ramakrishna takes up a very, very trivial example. So even a drunkard or one who had experienced this drinking of wine, even he will understand that when one gets drunk, one does not care how much of wine is there in the wine shop. He's just going there to enjoy, maybe in a gross way, but they enjoy the wine. So also many people go, they appreciate, but it is the gardener who has given or converted this beautiful piece of land into a garden. So you want to know the secret of how to build a garden like that, you have to meet the gardener. If you just appreciate, you will be left just appreciating it, but doing nothing yourself. Earlier, then he tells one more important story which happened. When I met Narendra, I never asked him who his father was or how many houses his father owned. Now that is one of the most engaging conversations that worldly people have. They find out, they try to put labels on all the people they meet. Is he a rich man? Is he a powerful person? Is he worth making friends with, and all those things? So Sri Ramakrishna is saying, I don't like that attitude. Why don't you take a human being and value him because of the divinity he has within him, whether he's sattvic or not? It really doesn't matter whether he's rich or poor, how many houses his father owned. He may be a rich person or he may be a very poor person, but a person has to be just according to the spiritual qualities he has. You know how it is? Then he gives an example and we'll close with this. You know how it is? Human beings admire wealth. So they also think that the Lord too must be admiring wealth. They think that if they praise God's riches, if they say God is wealth, that's why in Indian mythology we have this Kubera and all who have an inexhaustible treasure of wealth. So maybe there is a deep desire to think of God as one who has unlimited wealth. As if you respect wealthy men or wealthy people, naturally your God also has to be wealthy. And they think if we praise God and say he's a wealthy person, perhaps I will get wealth. Shambhu said to me, Shambhu is Shambhu Charan Malik, he said to me, he was a very rich person, and Thakur used to sometimes joke with him. Why don't you distribute a little wealth? You have so much wealth. He said, bless me, Shambhu told him. Sri Ramakrishna is recollecting. Bless me so that I may die, leaving all my wealth at his lotus feet. I mean, as if he has done he will be doing a great favor to the Lord, his Ishta, by leaving all the wealth at his feet. I told him, and Sri Ramakrishna was very frank, and was so outspoken. He did not care for this rich man. He said, it is wealth for you, but what can you give God? To him, all this is wood and dust. He who owns the whole universe, what does that wealth have any? It doesn't have any significance in their life. So when the jewelry was stolen in the shrine of Radhakanta, Mathur Babu and I went to the shrine. Mathur Babu was very angry. He said, away with you, Bhagwan. You aren't worth anything. They took all the jewelry from your body, but you couldn't do nothing about it. Then Sri Ramakrishna got angry. He said, what are you saying? Your jewels are no more than lumps of clay to him. He who has Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, as his Shakti, is not always guarding that little offering of money that you make to him. You should never speak in this way. Does your Lord care for your wealth? No, he is under the control of bhakti. What does he value? Not money, but a feeling heart for him, intense love, devotion, discrimination, and dispassion for his sake. So then Sri Ramakrishna will have an elaborate discussion on how different people with different tendencies worship God. If they love wealth, they will think God also loves wealth. If they love something else, they will think by offering God. If they love food, they will offer food to God. So he's making a few humorous comments afterwards. We'll discuss it in the next class. So you see, on elaborate puja days, every year we increase the menu, and there are so many wonderful things. Of course, foodie people who like food, they would focus more on that. And just to justify and say that it is not our greed, but we are offering to the Lord and I am taking it as prasad. But what is this prasad for? They know fully well that God is not going to eat it. Some of our senior monks used to say, when devotee said that I offered so many chappan bhog and this bhog and that bhog to the Lord, as if he wanted some praise. He said, do you think the Lord will accept and eat all these things? And he says, mind you, if the Lord really eats the things that you offer to him, then you will not give him. You know that the food is going to come back to you. And in the name of prasad, you will enjoy it. So it's your greed you are projecting upon the Lord. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna says. Your greed for wealth, your greed for food, your greed for anything in the world, you think by giving it to the Lord, it will be multiplied and you will get back bountifuls of these things. So anyway, I take your leave now and I'll see if there are some questions. Yeah, somebody has written that the booster, I hope the booster dose did not bother you. No, not much. I mean, I just have a little pain in the arm, that's all. But I am fine. That's why I could take 2 classes today. Anyway, I'll take your leave. It has been a very long and hectic day. 1 class in the morning. We have not got the recording. Those of you could not attend. Maybe I'll post that video, that recording of the Manila, Philippines class on YouTube as usual. We'll be posting it there. Okay, I take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.